All right. Hello, world. We're back for another live. We know the last 2 weeks we've been talking, of course, about the crisis ongoing in Israel, but today we want to pivot a little bit, and I'm really excited because we get to introduce one of our newest analysts, Helen. I think this is your first live. Welcome. How are you doing?
Thank you. I'm doing well. Thank you.
All right. So, Helen, you've been covering a lot of Sub-Saharan African security issues, and so today we're going to be talking about these trends that is something I think we've been following very closely, which is security in the Sahel. And we've seen a number of developments in the past few weeks that don't exactly augur well for the forecast of security. So, can you kind of give us a sense of where we are?
Okay. So I'll go back to the 2020 coup in Mali that set the stage for the withdrawal of foreign troops from the Sahel region, which also includes Burkina Faso and Niger. France was the first one to be expelled by the Malian junta in 2021, marking the end of nearly a decade-long presence in the country. And the Wagner Group, the Russia's Wagner Group, was deployed in Mali to engage in counterterrorism operations with the army. Burkina Faso followed suit in kicking out the French, and recently, under the leadership, not recently, sorry, under the leadership of former President Bazoum, Niger had agreed to host the remaining French troops in collaboration with France and other EU states. However, the junta, which recently took over, has now ordered the withdrawal of the remaining troops. And now, currently in Mali, where the UN peacekeeping mission MINUSMA was working, they're now withdrawing from the Sahel nation. So at the present, the only foreign forces remaining in the region are approximately 1,000 American troops stationed at a drone base in Agadez area, and of course the Russian Wagner group that is in Mali. So this geopolitical shift really signifies a significant transformation in the security landscape of the Sahel region and raises important questions about future developments in the area.
Yeah, I mean, the departure of so many foreign troops, it does not exactly seem like a positive development for regional security, especially in the context of all the coups that you've laid out there. So, what are the particular concerns that you're looking at, like on the ground? What are we worried about?
One, I think the first thing is the transfer of power to civilians, so the return of civilian rule. At the moment, it looks like elections are not a priority. So this was one mentioned by the Burkina Faso junta leader recently when marking the first anniversary since he took power. He said that security is the most important is the most important factor that they're considering in terms of holding elections. And it's almost clear that security is not going to improve, which worries which raises concerns as to whether elections will really be held. In Mali, the junta also delayed elections that were to be held in 2024. They delayed them and said that this was over technical issues, but it also mirrors what is happening in Burkina Faso, that really elections are not a priority.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like you really have this kind of toxic mix of rising threats from jihadists, also rising threats from non-jihadist militants. I mean, there's so many armed groups that are not necessarily Islamist extremists, but also are trying to fight the government and various rebel factions. And then you have this complete democratic deficit. So popular grievances, government instability. I mean, it seems like a toxic mix. One thing I know that we've talked about as well is like with the departure of all these foreign forces, sure, they weren't, the transforming the region into a bastion of stability, but they were really holding the line against a lot of these groups. And now with them leaving, you have the opportunity potentially for some of these groups to continue their expansion, not just within the countries you named, but also slightly creeping towards literal West Africa to places like Ghana, Togo, etc., places that haven't really had to deal with the type of violence that we've seen in Mali, Burkina Faso, etc.
Yes, that's correct. I think recently we saw the killing of 9 people in Ghana. by suspected militants in the northern region, which further raises concerns that, the jihadists might be expanding given the situation in the Sahel, that the departure of foreign troops has left a security void, leaving the militaries, which are not very well equipped to fight these jihadists.
Yeah, and I mean, just geographically, it's kind of hard for us to imagine, but when you just look at a map, so many of these countries just have massive ungoverned spaces. And one of the key capabilities that whether it was the French troops, et cetera, provided was air power, and that they could actually use, space surveillance and other techniques, including just, monitoring from their fighter jets to able to actually not only see what's going on the ground, but actually take action. And that's a capability that a lot of these regional militaries just don't have. And, just in terms of being able to understand where the threats are, let alone take action, they're now really hamstrung in that ability.
Exactly. And we've also, it's hard to tell at the moment whether there has been an uptick in violence since, let's say, the Niger junta took over, but we've certainly seen an increase in attacks. And this is also partly due to the military having to deploy, capable soldiers to guard or secure the junta in the capital, leaving a void in areas like Western Niger where the jihadists are active.
Yeah, I mean, you're not exactly painting a comforting picture here. When you have more soldiers that are guarding the junta in the capital, by definition, there are fewer out there towing the line in places that where these jihadists and other rebel groups are. I mean, unfortunately, it's a simple matter of math there and capabilities. So I guess, for so many of our readers and our viewers that kind of look at the Sahel and think this is a very far away place from where we are, why should we care? I guess I'll pose that question to you. Why is this a threat that we're concerned about that we continue to monitor so closely?
So we've seen a number of coups take place in West Africa. Some describe it as a snowball effect, but these are some of the grievances are not just specific to the Sahel, are also applied to other parts of Africa. So economic grievances such as inflation, high cost of living. There's a possibility that that could turn violent, or the military could use an opportunity, could see it as an opportunity to take over if there's enough unrest in the country. So we've seen in Senegal where protests have taken place and they've turned violent, but it doesn't mean that there's a coup that will take place. But certainly there's inspiration, for lack of a better word, to other countries when they see that the military can take over and try to sort things out, even though that's questionable as to whether they are really sorting things out.
Yeah, definitely questionable. And as you're kind of painting a scene of these popular grievances are not just in the Sahel, they're elsewhere. The less, kind of democratic representative governance that you have, the more that it's in the hands of the military, the less likely we are to see any real improvement on all those grievances. And then you add in the mixture of the expansion of jihadist groups. Yes, perhaps today and for the immediate future, there is still a problem primarily for these Sahelian states, but we know that their intents are far larger. They're not just interested in committing attacks in, say, Burkina Faso. They ultimately want to move into more populated, denser areas along the coast. And, in a worst case scenario, of course, you have the idea that these groups are able to consolidate territory. Is one day one of them able to launch an attack in Western Europe, the United States, et cetera? I mean, that's the nightmare scenario, so to speak. We're not saying that that's happening tomorrow by any means, but the history that we've seen from terrorism the past decade suggests the longer you kind of have these voids open, the greater the concern will be that over time they're going to lead to blowback in the West. So I guess with all of that, we've got a lot that we're we're thinking about. We don't want to take too much of our viewers' time, so we can leave it there for today. But obviously, if anyone wants to talk about these things more, or learn more about, so we're going to be putting out our annual forecast in a few months, and I guess about 2 months now, so we can get excited for that. But you can definitely read more of what Helen's writing and more of what our other analysts are writing at ranenetwork.com. And otherwise, Helen, I hope it's a nice weekend for you.
Thank you.